Praat jy oor my? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a privilege to be here with you at the ISF in Cape Town. My name is Yolandi Furniss. I'm the marketing lead for Syngenta Seedcare, and it is absolutely a privilege to be with you today. Our discussion today is about a very interesting topic, I might say. It's about the unseen enemy. Now, you might ask, what is the unseen enemy about? It's about nematodes and the impact that they have on African agricultural systems. But this discussion will definitely not be possible without my esteemed colleague here, Professor Driekie Fourie. Now let me tell you a little bit about Driekie. Not only is she a professor in plant parasitic nematodes, she has also 32 years experience in this subject matter under her belt. Her focus is primarily about research and training, but without giving too much away, I'm going to hand the stage to Driekie just to quickly introduce herself to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolandi, and welcome everyone to this platform. It really is a privilege, I agree with you, and this is my first attendance of a World Seed Conference. So, as Yolandi indicated, I have been in the discipline of nematology, doing research and training for more than 30 years. I started off my career at the Agricultural Research Council, and I focused there on integrated nematode pest management. Well, I did my postgraduate training at the Northwest University, where I obtained my honors and my master's degree, and then I had the privilege to go to Belgium and do a PhD at the Leuven University. Well, after about 19 years at the ARC, I joined the Northwest University, where I just proceeded with this journey in the discipline of nematodes. So there I also focused on integrated pest management in that sub-program, specifically aiming at reducing the population densities of the economically most important genera like root knot nematodes and lesion nematodes. And then recently I got the opportunity to join Syngenta. And this is wonderful for me to plow back my knowledge and experience, but more important to learn in this specific sector of agriculture.
Absolutely, Driekie. And I think without further ado, it is time to kick off today's session. And Driekie, if you look, and our audience members, you can see it from this slide, that sometimes even our farmers are a bit concerned and not sure. Tell us, what are nematodes? What do they do? Where do they live?
Yolandi, this is a very important question. Nematodes are microscopic small organisms, and they live in the water film around the soil particles. So they are there in the ground beneath our feet. So when a farmer actually goes to his crop and inspects it, they will usually not know what the reason for the poor performance is. For example, when the farmer stands along a wilted plant or a chlorotic plant or even a stunted plant, some plants may die, the farmer will not know that it's nematodes because they cannot be seen. They cannot be seen with the naked eye. And also another problem, the symptoms they cause are usually confused with those caused by other plant pathogenic microbes like fungi and bacteria, viruses, and so on. Also, stress deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies. So that's a big problem for our farmers.
Driekie, tell me, and if we look at the three images, just talk us through it and give us just a quick breakdown of each of the focus areas within this.
Yes. This is very important that our audience realize the small size of nematodes. When, for example, I show you this finger of mine, and you imagine on the tip there's one little grain of fine salt, only one. Just think about that, and that is the size of a root knot nematode female, as can be seen in that first image. So this little female, she's the largest life stage of this nematode group, and she causes all the damage in the plants. Then next to it, there's a nematode moving, and that specific nematode has been magnified 1,000 times, believe it or not. That's how tiny they are, and that is what we as nematologists see when we inspect them through the lenses of a microscope. And then even the transparent body of the nematode makes it more difficult to distinguish, even for the trained eye. So I can just give you an idea. The largest plant parasitic nematode is about 11 millimeters long and only a few micrometers in diameter. So you can see it as a very, very fine white thread in a counting dish when it's extracted in water. Okay, let's look at the last image, where on that counting grid you can see thousands of black little spots. Those are the eggs of the root knot nematode females, and this has been magnified 100 times. So just think about it. That is what we see. We count them, and then we can go back to the farmer and tell them what is the problem, how big is the problem, and what they should do.
And you most clearly need a really trained eye.
Definitely.
Now, Driekie, if you look at nematodes as a whole, surely you distinguish about plant parasitic and beneficial nematodes.
Yes, yes. That is crucial, because we don't only have the bad guys or girls, the plant parasitic nematodes, as we often refer to them. We also have the good nematodes, the beneficial ones. But it's very important for us to distinguish. And the plant parasitic nematode has this stylet in the upper part of the head area, and it's thrusting it in and out through the plant cell wall into the plant cell, where enzymes are released that liquidize the content of the plant cell, and then it's drawn back through that hollow stylet.
Yes.
And that is actually the food of the nematode. So this is the plant parasitic group. If we look at the beneficial nematode group, those are the nematodes that are used as bioindicators of soil health. And it's becoming more and more important that we have to know the status of the health of our soils. So we have different groups, the fungivores with a very small stylet, and they feed on fungi in the rhizosphere.
Yes.
And then we have the bacterivores, they feed on bacteria, and then we have the omnivores and the predators, which either have a tooth or a very big stylet with which they basically suck out the content of other microorganisms, even nematodes, mites, and so on.
How interesting, Driekie. How interesting. In our earlier discussions this morning, you referred to a specific phrase the whole time, and it's so interesting, and I would love for you to also share that with the audience. And what she referred to was the big giveaway. So Driekie, just talk them also through to what is the big giveaway?
Okay, that is a very interesting term, and that refers to that part of the yield that farmers unknowingly basically give away to nematodes feeding on their crops. So that part of the yield was also destined for consumption by human, also for use as animal fodder. But it is given away because they don't know that nematodes feed on their plants.
And what percentage are we talking about, Rick?
Well, Yolandi, globally, it is estimated that about 10 to 15%
Sure.
of yield losses occur in a variety of crops. But of course,
It can be more.
it can be more depending on the crop, depending on the population density, depending on the specific nematode species feeding on that crop.
And Driekie, also on this slide, you can see that it's clearly defined the three categories in which we position these nematodes. Are certain of these categories more damaging than others?
Yes, definitely. In 2013, all our nematologists across the globe have been consulted, and we made a list of the top 5 economically important nematodes in our countries. And then a list was generated that contained the top 10. So the following 3 nematode groups are in the top 3 positions. And the first one is the root knot nematodes. And on the first image, one can see the female, that is that round structure. She's feeding in the vascular cylinder of a soybean root. And at the bottom, one can see the numerous eggs she produces. She can produce up to 1,000 eggs per egg mass. So you can just think it's a linear increase in numbers during a season.
Absolutely.
It's frightening. In the second place, we have the cis nematodes. So the cis nematodes, for example, contain the quarantine nematodes like the golden potato cis nematode, and then there are others that feed on cereals. They are very, very damaging to crops. And the white females are usually, they have such hard cuticles, it's very difficult to control them. And they may survive for years in soil without a host. And then the third group, they are the lesion nematodes. Now, the lesion nematodes and the root knot nematodes, they have a very wide host range. And therefore, it's very difficult, especially in our South African and African grain crop sequences, to lower their population densities using different crops, because all the crops are basically very susceptible to them. Sunflower, dry bean, soybean, wheat. Opposed to that, the cis nematodes have a narrow host range, and there are quite a number of crops that we can use in a crop rotation system to reduce their numbers. But we will talk more about it tomorrow.
Wonderful. Now, Driekie, so say for instance now a farmer, if we look at above ground and a farmer sees that there's damage and it doesn't look uniform, how does a farmer identify that there's pressure, that there's a problem? What happens above the ground?
Yes, and that's also very important to get this message out to farmers, because when a farmer sees there are patches of poor growth in a field, they must immediately think about nematodes. Because remember, I said these organisms are so small and they cannot move on their own very far. So these patches usually starts out very small, and then with the use of implements or run-off water during heavy rain spells, even wind, these patches can expand in size over time. So farmers may also think that because these symptoms are similar to those that I told you about, like nutrient deficiencies and waterlogging, but farmers have to realize that these smaller patches of non-optimal growth of their plants usually is a sign of nematode infection.
There's a sign.
Yes.
So if that farmer then knows, okay, the signs are there, and above ground he sees that there's a problem, what does he need to do, and what needs to happen below the soil?
That's very important, Yolandi. A farmer needs to realize that they have to take out the plants, uproot the plants, and physically look at the root system. In the first image, it's evident that thick roots, it looks like thick, swollen fingers. They are typically caused by root knot nematodes. And a farmer can immediately see there's something wrong.
There's an issue.
On the other photo on the top, one can see that the root shows necrosis or dark blackish or brownish areas of discoloration. And that is a typical example of lesion nematode damage. But again, it can be a symptom caused by pathogenic microbes. And then at the bottom, Yolandi, will you as a housewife buy such a potato tuber?
I think I'll be off potatoes for the rest of my life. I'm honest.
So this is a huge problem because the cosmetic appearance of that tuber is so adversely affected by root knot nematodes, and it will be downgraded at the market. It won't even be accepted. So the farmer can only feed that to the livestock. They will not be influenced adversely because they will only get some extra proteins, so these nematodes don't attack the animals. But the farmer will lose a lot of money.
Yeah, that loss in production, the yield,
Yes.
everything, it just relates back to that unseen enemy at the end of the day.
Yes, the big giveaway. And more important, those tubers cannot be used for seed potato production. It's not allowed because this way the nematode problem will just be spread.
Driekie, now if we take whatever we've seen below the ground, and how does that relate to the visual that we have on screen in terms of above the ground damage? How do you bring these two together?
I want to relate this for the audience and our listeners. If one look at the damaged roots, it's clear that that plant cannot take up water and nutrients and translocate it effectively to the upper, the aerial parts of the plants because there's too much damage at the anatomical level. The physiology of the plant is adversely affected. So that is why we see those symptoms above ground on the plants. And it's very important, Yolandi, farmers must take these roots and soil to an accredited nematology laboratory for analysis. And they must not do that a month before they want to plant because usually then there's nothing growing, actively growing.
Sooner than later.
Yes. So don't just take soil samples because the endoparasitic life stages won't necessarily be there.
At the time, yeah.
Yes, we need the soil for the ectoparasites and the roots or the below ground parts. So what I'm actually saying is the farmer must, during the active growing period of a crop, take those samples for analysis.
And Driekie, in terms of nematode pressure, what do we know about that in the grain producing areas of South Africa?
Well, we are really fortunate and privileged because since 2008, especially Syngenta funded nematode surveys. I was still at the Agricultural Research Council. Me and my team did some surveys for them. And then when I joined the Northwest University, we just proceeded. And lately, Grain SA also came aboard and, for example, sponsored 2 MSc students that just now finished the most recent surveys. So very important in this regard, Yolandi, is when one look at the first image of the survey of 2013-14, it is evident that most of the field samples had high and intermediate pressure. High pressure indicated by the red dots and intermediate pressure indicated by the orange dots. And only a few of those fields had low nematode pressure. So clearly there's a problem. Nematodes is a constraint in grain crop production.
But if you look at the second slide, where you can see that there's a shift in terms of the pressure, it doesn't mean that with the second trial that the pressure changed and that there was a lesser pressure in the grain producing areas.
Yes.
Am I right?
What happens is from season to season there are shifts and changes in terms of pressure. So it's so crucial that we also generate data on other parameters like abiotic and biotic. Abiotic, for example, temperature, rainfall, soil analysis, chemical, physical. We must know the nematicides used by the farmer. We must know the crop history of a certain field. And that helps us to explain why in some seasons we have higher pressure, like in the first graph there, and then in the next season the intermediate pressure levels were dominating. So that's very important, Yolandi.
So now, if I can sum that up, I think it's about data, collecting
Yes.
the data, getting industry support, getting everybody to know more
Yes.
in order to know more.
Yes, and it's crucial that these surveys are continued because we just in 2016 find a root knot nematode species that is known to be more pathogenic than the other species. And there are several reasons for which I'm not going to elaborate on now. But we found it for the first time in South African grain crop production systems, and we found it about 2 years ago again. So we have to be proactive and inform the farmers, because this species, another kind of approach is needed to mitigate the damage caused by it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we are now coming near to the end of our talk, and I just want to invite the audience and our listeners, please find out more about nematodes. Also our farmers, we need to constantly raise awareness about nematodes so that they know what nematodes are, how they can damage crops. And this is a very good read, the book that is reflected there on the screen. It's about integrated nematode control, and the editor there is a renowned emeritus professor, Richard Sikora from Bonn University in Germany. And he, in this book, he basically, it's a compilation of various chapters on various crops, and with experts taking care of a specific crop and indicating the state-of-the-art vision and strategies to lower the target nematode densities in soil. So this also links with my talk tomorrow. Yes, and I invite everyone to come and listen again to the Seed channel tomorrow, when I will talk specifically on best practices to manage nematodes.
But Driekie, between now and tomorrow, where can they find you if they need to talk to you?
That's very crucial. Please visit our Syngenta booth. Come and see what Syngenta has in store in terms of crop protection. And then, very important, come and look at what is coming for nematode control. I promise you, it's something big. I'm very excited.
Something big is really about to happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow afternoon, same time, Driekie will be here with a second talk about the integrated management of nematodes and also how to eradicate that. Same time tomorrow between 12 and 2, please join us for the ladies' luncheon, where industry leaders in agriculture, female industry leaders in agriculture, is going to get together and share information, share knowledge, empower people. And I think this is such an amazing platform to have these discussions, and it's ideal to have that. So reach out to us. We will be in one of the other, I think one of the main walls, I think it's the first floor, between 12 and 2. Make sure you are there, and then 1 o'clock to meet Driekie. I'm going to open for questions. Do we have any questions for Driekie? If you are a bit not sure, you know where she is. She is at the Syngenta stand. Please make sure to come and say hi. And I really want to take this opportunity to thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, and we're looking forward to see you tomorrow.
Thank you,
Thank
Yolandi.
you, Driekie. I appreciate you.
It was a wonderful session. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thanks, Rix.